Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Very pleased to welcome you to today's webinar. Topic of discussion is your organization ready for the next wave of endpoint security modernization? Got a trio of panelists for you today. They include George Chatterton, the Secure Endpoint Practice Manager with Optiv, Randy Lariar, who is Demand and Delivery Director with Optiv, and Chris Prowl, who is Senior Product Marketing Manager with CrowdStrike. Now, before I turn you over to the trio here, let me give you some background on the session today. With so many new changes taking place in the cybersecurity infrastructure space, how you were staying ahead of the curve is the question. Formulating a strategy and a roadmap to safeguard your endpoints has never been more invaluable than today. So I want you to join Optiv and CrowdStrike, our endpoint experts, as we dive into the latest shifts in the endpoint industry and learn how your business can create a strategy to withstand the unpredictable, foster resilience and agility. We'll talk about iterative endpoint modernization, how to address the growing complexity and rapid evolution of modern cyber attacks in relation to AI advancements, and the benefits of a unified cloud-native platform. Bit of information about my organization, Information Security Media Group. We are a global educational and intelligence firm. We're based in the U.S. in Princeton, New Jersey. And of course, you may know us by any number of our 37 media properties. These include Bank Info Security, Gov Info Security, and Data Breach Today. In all, we reach an audience of over 1.3 million security and technology leaders globally, and we give them a daily diet of news, analysis, research, events, and educational programs just like this one. A few notes of housekeeping. If you have any questions for our panel, you can submit them anytime via the chat window on your screen. Only caution I'll give you is we may not get to every question today. In that case, any questions we don't answer, we'll respond to you later via email. Should you encounter technical issues while viewing today's webinar, I encourage you to take down the email address you see on your screen. If you write to webinars at ismg.io, we've got support staff standing by to help. And a reminder, today's webinar is copyrighted material meant for today's session and individual study purposes only. If you would like to use any of the information presented today, or if you're looking for customized training materials, please contact us. Delighted to introduce our sponsors. Up first, Optiv. Optiv Security is the cyber advisory and solutions leader, delivering strategic and technical expertise to nearly 6,000 companies across every major industry. They partner with organizations to advise, deploy, and operate cybersecurity programs, from strategy and managed security services to risk, integration, and technology solutions. With clients at the center of their unmatched ecosystem of people, products, partners, and programs, they accelerate business progress like no other company can. To learn more, visit optiv.com. And of course, CrowdStrike has redefined security with the world's most advanced cloud-native platform that protects and enables the people, processes, and technologies that drive modern enterprises. CrowdStrike secures the most critical areas of enterprise risk, endpoints and cloud workloads, identity and data, to keep customers ahead of today's adversaries and stop breaches. Powered by the CrowdStrike Security Cloud, the CrowdStrike Falcon platform leverages real-time indicators of attack, threat intelligence, on evolving adversary tradecraft, and enriched telemetry from across the enterprise to deliver hyper-accurate detections, automated protection and remediation, elite threat hunting, and prioritized observability of vulnerabilities, all through a single lightweight agent. With CrowdStrike, customers benefit from superior protection, better performance, reduced complexity, and immediate time to value. Quickly, let's meet our panelists and turn this over to them. George Chatterton is an information security professional with nearly 20 years experience in various industry sectors, including manufacturing, telecom, value-added resellers, security solution integrators, managed services, and technology service providers. He is Secure Endpoint Practice Manager with Optiv. Randy Lariar leads the Optiv Cyber Digital Transformation, Big Data, and Analytics practice that designs, builds, and operates scalable solutions using data lakes, streaming analytics, and machine learning. He is Demand and Delivery Director with Optiv. And Chris Prow is a senior product marketing manager at CrowdStrike, focused on endpoint detection and response and extended detection and response. With that, let me turn you over to our panelists here. George, Randy, Chris, please take it from here.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, ISMG, as well as CrowdStrike and Optiv, for allowing us the opportunity to share some great information with you all today. As Tom mentioned, some key talking points, takeaways. Iterative is the key word here. It's meant to be a journey. It's not something that's achieved overnight, as many customers and folks might be looking to accomplish, as well as, in terms of AI advancements, we have quite a bit of information to cover in how to partner with technologies, as well as, how to address the growing complexity and rapid evolution of modern cyber attacks, as well as the third benefit of a unified cloud native platform, and why is it so important to consolidate cyber solutions.
A little bit of context here, why endpoint and generative AI. Unless you've been living under a rock over the last 2 years, you've probably seen AI sprinkled into every marketing brief, investor presentation, and product. And that certainly is true in the cyber world. We have seen at Optiv an increase in interest both in AI capabilities to help the defender, but also just a increase in the need to be able to more rapidly and effectively respond to an AI-enabled attacker. Certainly within days of ChatGPT becoming a thing, we could find instances of phishing emails and different kinds of communication that no longer have imperfect grammar, or become harder and harder to determine what's real and what's fake. And unfortunately, that just expands the probability that some of those attacks are going to be successful, and it creates for a much broader space for attackers to operate on. Once they're in, they have the advantages of code assistance and different kinds of generative workflows that we know and love on the defender and on the business side, to help attack faster and more effectively with less training. And so the current threats, as well as the emerging threats of even more and more sophistication of the adoption of AI models in a lot of organizations that hadn't previously had them, or giving those models more autonomy and ability to do actions on the user's behalf, potentially with supervision or without, give a playground of opportunity for attackers to go after. Furthermore, we've seen from the likes of Microsoft and Apple that the endpoint itself is changing. Later this fall, many iOS users are going to have access to a new form of AI that works with your personal information and integrates both with on-device and in the cloud AI, potentially expanding the surface area of data loss, potentially adding new ways for folks to have their information be compromised, or for automations to kick off that we don't want to have kick off. So the bottom line is that the world is changing very quickly on the technology front. The level of change that we've all seen in our professional careers with AI is probably at or a greater length of that shift to cloud, shift to internet. It is a foundational change in how technology is working and what people are doing with it. And security, including endpoint, needs to keep up and needs to respond with a modern, iterative, agile defense.
So the $1 million question that we at Optiv get asked a lot is, what do we get with our investment? What can we expect to get out of our security programs and technology? And, one answer might be utopia, right? The quest for the holy grail, the single pane of glass, a single source of truth, a technology that can do all of these things, or a partner who can help achieve these desired outcomes, whether it be a holistic threat protection and rapid response program, with the opportunity to not only provide that level of protection, but being able to respond and identify and remediate almost in near real time. And in terms of many clients as they are navigating their journey for modernizing the common workplace, integration and adaptive means of security. We've got a lot of customers of ours, and others that we've experienced where, there's legacy equipment and outdated, out of warranty support, or you've got a multitude of, remote workforce, distributed globally, or, it might be OT devices where you need to provide critical detection and response on those devices. So in terms of optimizing the performance of not only the end user, the business, but also reducing the attack surface on any type of device that end user could be anywhere within the world. Now, further expanding upon those desired business outcomes, we'll just walk through them one after the other. Enhance visibility with the partnership between a modern, secure endpoint solution. You are getting closer to that utopia. You are getting closer to that single pane of glass. You are getting enhanced visibility by, achieving, greater visibility into the overall network, endpoint, and security landscape. Decisions may need to be made within, a minute, definitely less than 30 minutes in typical incident response times, right? The advance of AI threats are increasing, as mentioned, and having an understanding of what to do with that type of information. So being able to gather threat intelligence with the ability to integrate within your operations, having that threat protection as the sophistication of these attacks continue to grow, all at the end of the day to talk about cost, right? Doing more with less is not a new concept, but in terms of partnering with a technology, a vendor, or some sort of service provider, we are all tasked with doing more with less. And generative AI, or the types of attacks that are now prevalent in today's age, the cost of hiring, a resource who has all of those skills or, credentials, may be harder and harder to come by. So by partnering with a modern endpoint solution, you're able to capture a lot of these business outcomes within that partnership. So here at Optiv, we are presented with this challenging question: how do I get the ROI out of my technology or my service provider? And I have multiple EDR solutions, or I have multiple solutions that say they do X, Y, or Z, and it's very disjointed. There's gaps in the protection, there's limited integration, or there's a lack of adequate staff and or processes to support them. Our solution here at Optiv, we provide a very streamlined approach that combines advisory and technology solutions that advise, deploy, and mature. And in terms of our next-gen endpoint protection service offering, in terms of modern device management, as well as application control. A lot of those services look like implementation or migration. But most organizations have something in place today. It may not be configured to vendor best practices. However, there's the quick starts to, we'll just deploy up to a certain percentage, and then the rest is left to that organization to finalize their deployment. So here at Optiv, we're here to help not only configure, implement, migrate, but ultimately mature your technology and achieve those desired outcomes. So bringing this all together, we've got obtainable outcomes in terms of our approach that we take here at Optiv, and that follows that advisory, deploying, and maturing process. So in terms of selecting the appropriate endpoint detection and response program, or partner, or solution provider, our team takes the approach of effective implementation, business practices adopted from the vendor specifically in terms of supporting those solutions, optimizing the endpoint over a period of time, and enhancing the overall endpoint security posture within your organization, and an efficient endpoint security program that aligns with your business needs. So, as we mentioned before, it's iterative. It's not meant to be solved overnight, as many of us would like for that to be. However, you have a partner here at Optiv and CrowdStrike that can help you achieve those desired outcomes.
All right. Thank you, George, and thank you, Randy. I want to build off of where George and Randy both started here, and basically kind of talk about what we're up against today as defenders, specifically from the CrowdStrike perspective. You might be familiar with the 2024 CrowdStrike Global Threat Report. That's where a lot of this data comes from. Just released the latest one for 2024. And what it revealed is just sort of, adversaries are faster and more evasive. And endpoints are still that critical attack vector. So we track something called breakout time here at CrowdStrike. And this is sort of a measure of the time it takes for an attacker to land on that first endpoint and then start to begin moving laterally in the environment. So we're down to just about 62 minutes. I've been tracking this a couple years now, and 62 minutes is the fastest that we've seen, but that is the average. When we talk about the absolute fastest, it's sub 3 minutes. So it just really sort of brings to the forefront just how important that speed of response is in the landscape, but not just the speed of response, but also that sort of escalation in both sophistication, but also evasiveness of the adversary. So 75% of the attacks that we're seeing are actually malware free. So this basically means that if you're using legacy AV or legacy endpoint security that relies on signatures to actually block these things, you're going to have a very difficult time seeing and stopping these fileless or malware-free attacks. So if the attacker has decided to use either something that's a trusted tool in your environment, something that could be considered shadow IT or a remote management tool, that will give that attacker so much access to an environment in a way that's very difficult for a legacy approach to actually see or do anything about, something that you might not be able to outright block. And so that sort of modern endpoint security approach is really going to help you deal with this escalation in complexity, in sophistication, and whatnot. But the important thing to remember is that approximately 90% of successful attacks are still beginning on the endpoint. This is a critical attack vector, and it's going to be a key stepping stone for adversaries if they're wanting to pursue a really serious attack. But security today is really struggling to keep up even with this threat landscape at hand. So there's that constant onslaught of technology challenges, budget constraints, just the evolving threats that we see every day. And it comes down to sort of these three buckets that we see most often. That's the outdated security approaches. So whether that's signature-based prevention or a lack of AI-based detection that makes you much more reactive as opposed to predictive when it comes to these sorts of attacks, as well as no scalable automation. Maybe you have controls to be able to remediate an individual host, but at scale, sort of what position does that put you in when you're dealing with a really large endpoint fleet that can be really tough to manage? Then we have the bucket of limited visibility and coverage gaps. So a lot of these legacy tools have limited context, if any, or no threat intelligence that they can overlay that really provides you with maybe the data you need, but not necessarily the actionable insights that you need to actually take action if you need to. And then, of course, something like inconsistent operating system coverage. So we have organizations with a lot of different OSs in their environments. And it may be the case that maybe when you initially started planning your security program, you had a certain set of operating systems in mind, and then all of a sudden you want 10,000 new Chrome OS devices. How does that change the coverage landscape that you have to deal with? And do you have a platform that can adapt to that? As well as just the blind spots that get created from all this tool sprawl. It's pretty easy to want to attack all these different security use cases with a different point product. And over the years, you can sort of build up a really complex environment that's really tackling, multiple use cases with multiple different tools. But that kind of leads me to the third bucket, that you end up in a situation where The security architectures that we've created are now too complex and hard to operate. And you can just imagine a new analyst sitting down and having to sort of inherit all these technological decisions that an organization has made over the years, and suddenly you end up with multiple agents, multiple consoles to then have to pivot in between. And they all have a learning curve associated with each one of them. And then the case of you having to actually respond quickly to something can be very difficult to then be jumping in between all these different tools, not to mention all the tuning and the exclusions and the background scanning that can result if you have all of this going on at once. And so that's why at CrowdStrike, we've pioneered an approach for modern endpoint security that we feel like is both new and differentiated. And it comes down to 3 key pillars. So that starts with over a decade of EDR innovation to accelerate detection and response. This is sort of my bread and butter from the EDR, XDR space. Sort of started with the key visibility that you get from EDR, and then now we expand that to native XDR use cases as well for that complete picture. But it's not just the detection and response piece alone. We're also bringing in industry-leading intelligence to better understand and outsmart the adversary with all the right context to actually turn, as I said before, that data into something that's really actionable, something that you can do something about in your environment. And then finally, the sort of interplay that we see between both the advanced technology with things like AI that we'll talk a little bit more about, but also sort of the expertise that CrowdStrike brings to the table as well. So even if as a customer, you're only leveraging CrowdStrike products and you're only sort of managing them yourselves, you also benefit from everything that our security professionals learn from being out there in the trenches, actually on the front lines of stopping cyber threats every day. Everything that our experts learn in those situations gets reinfused back into the product, ultimately making for more stronger protections and a more unified approach to security that we think sets us up well for the threat landscape. And so what does that look like for us? Together, it looks like a unified AI native security platform where you can start with whatever your needs are today by deploying that single lightweight agent. And then from there, over time, you can expand to those additional use cases that you need. So maybe that just looks like EDR today, but maybe next year, 2 years from now, cloud security, identity protection become more important to you. Great. You don't have to deploy that new agent. You can rely on the unified platform that your folks have already started learning and then just expand. We don't just want to meet you where you are in terms of security maturity. We want to be that vehicle that ultimately helps move you from where you are today to where you want to be, to that ideal security posture. But I did mention AI, and we did talk a lot about how often used as a buzzword, something that, well, everyone's got AI, right? Like that's all well and good. But I think at CrowdStrike, the perspective that we take is not just saying, hey, we got AI to combat the AI that might be used by the attacker. What we really want to do is infuse AI into every piece of the analyst workflow in their day-to-day activity to make even a novice user sort of punch above their weight. To be able to quickly adapt a platform and stop threats just like a seasoned professional. And so there's a few ways that we do this, but particularly I want to talk about Charlotte AI, which is a really exciting opportunity for us that, yes, it does cover that conversational piece where you can easily ask a question and get quick answers. We've trained Charlotte AI not to be a generalist, like kind of what you hear maybe in the more consumer-facing uses of generative AI. But with Charlotte AI, what we're really doing is trying to take the power of the Falcon platform and make that something that Charlotte AI can be an expert in, so that for a new user, you don't necessarily have to know all the ins and outs of the platform. You can sort of offload some of that extra work to Charlotte AI. So when it comes to asking a question, getting a quick response, suddenly the AI can be the syntax expert, the query language expert, and that new novice user can get up and running, get all the information that they need. Nothing more, nothing less. The only thing they'll get out of the AI is anything that they already have access to in terms of data, telemetry, intel, and what have you. But not just that, we also strive to make sure that Charlotte AI is integrated at every step in the console. So what that could look like is, even if you aren't in the specific Charlotte AI interface, let's say you're triaging a detection over in sort of the EDR world, you'll have an option to have Charlotte AI explain some command line parameters to you. So let's say an attacker used certain commands. You're not super familiar with what those look like. You have a whole chunk of text there you're looking at. Charlotte AI can actually analyze that for you and very methodically explain line by line exactly what's going on there, again, so that users of all skill levels can be elevated to stop these threats even faster. And so what that looks like is truly unified investigations on the Falcon platform. So in addition to sort of trying to power these workflows with AI, we also want to make it really visually and interactive for our users. And so what that looks like is with our recent incident workbench announcement. You can sort of see that on the screen here. We're talking about what analysts have called collaboration unlike anything else on the market today. So with the ability to sort of let analysts take notes, assign incidents, collaborate visually in real time with other analysts on the platform, things like control history. So if someone makes a change, you can easily revert it back. Really trying to deliver that Google Docs for the SOC type of experience where you can see all those users in the top hand corner. From any point, anywhere in the globe that they are, they can all jump in on one incident and really try and paint the best picture. They can ask Charlotte AI, hey, are there other hosts that are impacted that I didn't know about before? Hey, is this threat actor something that's related? Should I add it to the threat intel graph? And then right from here, you can take your response actions as well, just to make it as easy as possible to get that complete picture of an attack, but also take action in the same place with your team so you can really truly respond as a unit. All right. And we bring that all together by delivering uniquely these sort of capabilities here to really create a situation where teams can outpace and outsmart the adversary. And that looks like complete visibility to help track and stop the adversary no matter where they move in your environment, AI-powered prevention and detection to help stop advanced attacks with the help of world-class AI, especially if attackers themselves are using AI more and more. Unified investigations to really build that comprehensive picture of an attack and let folks collaborate from wherever they are in the world. Deliver tools for integrated response so you can respond rapidly and with surgical precision. And then a platform that's easy to deploy and operate that you can deploy with ease and then defend with confidence, no matter how your security needs evolve over time.
Well, beautiful gentlemen, appreciate your time and your insight. We have the opportunity to take some questions now from the audience. I want to remind our attendees, if you have questions, you haven't submitted them, do so now. We might not be able to get to every question today. Those questions that we don't answer, we will be sure to get responses back to you later via email. That said, I've got some questions here. Gentlemen, the first question I have for you, you can't protect what you can't see. How does one get 100% visibility into the potential endpoint attack surface?
Tom, that's a great question. I'll take that one. So we could follow the old adage of reduce, reuse, recycle, if we remember all of those, right? So if you can't update outdated or out of warranty type of resources, one thing you could do is to reduce your attack surface where applicable. Now that may not be applicable in all situations, but another approach would be to limit your access to your organization's resources based on a finite data set, whether it be device type, user type, or maybe both, and then operating off of that zero trust principle if appropriate. But combining the two is optimal, but neither gets you 100% potential attack surface visibility. Chris, maybe. Yeah.
Totally agree. And from our perspective, obviously, that starts with something like EDR visibility, but also creating opportunities to identify unmanaged hosts or those things that you don't have visibility in so that you can either get visibility into those via EDR visibility or come up with some compensating control otherwise.
So follow-up question, I hear this a lot from CISOs. How do I protect endpoints that aren't entirely under my control? And there are a lot of them these days.
Yeah, I would suggest starting with the end user, right? If you don't have the protection, end user security awareness training is probably a good place to start. In ensuring that operating systems are up to date, locked down to pertinent data applications relevant to the specific user roles, not global admin for anything and everything under the sun, right? So if you can't control the device, what can you do? I mean, if there's no agent, there's no endpoint configurations, then maybe we go back to the answer in question one, which is restricting based on device type and user type and wrapping with zero trust or maybe multi-factor authentication.
Fair point. Another question I have, I hear this a lot as well. Are we talking about more agents on our endpoints?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of tools out there, right? And depending on where you're at in your journey, with CrowdStrike, it's one, right? With CrowdStrike, it's one agent with the capability to deploy services in the quest of that single pane of glass. And with that AI counterpart, SIM, identity, SOAR, EDR, threat intelligence, all of that is combined into one technology, one platform, to where you can consolidate your number of agents, actually down to one.
Yeah, there's definitely a number of technologies out there, and I think, at least from our perspective at CrowdStrike, the more that we can tackle more use cases with the same set of data and the same footprint, that's what we're going to shoot to do.
Very good. Now, I got some questions here about the role of AI. First question, how are you avoiding hallucinations or poisoned data?
Um, following the theme of, that reduce, reuse, recycle approach, right? If you can't reduce your footprint, partnering with a modernized endpoint detection and response, solution has the capability to cut down the noise of the alerts, the false positive or active threats in real time. So it's a challenge, right? I mean, Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, at least from our perspective, especially with Charlotte AI, this is obviously super important to us in building in the proper safeguards to make sure that this information is, actionable, but also auditable is really important to us. So, I mean, Charlotte AI's LLMs are trained on the product documentation and the APIs of the CrowdStrike platform to ultimately make sure that Charlotte AI isn't an expert in the Falcon platform and not necessarily trained on the entire internet like you see with a lot of consumer-facing approaches. But it's really important for us that Charlotte AI only uses the data from the Falcon platform, the telemetry and the intel that the user that's asking the questions already has. And then when they get those answers, we want to make sure that they're audible and traceable. So this looks like there's actually a button that says show response details for every single answer. The user can go in, see exactly sort of what brought the AI to that conclusion, and then no action is ever taken without finally getting that confirmation, that explanation of what's going to happen to the user, so that ultimately they're in control over what happens in the environment.
We're
Now,
seeing
what
a massive uptick in, security teams adopting generative AI solutions, whether it's ChatGPT, Google Gemini, prompt where they're using it, all the way up through products like Charlotte or home-baked solutions. Generally, the availability of contextual data to ground the response is important. The tuning and training that CrowdStrike has done is excellent. But even before that, it's being able to feed the model the context of your specific environment to understand what it's actually responding to and trying to get it to respond from the data versus from making it up from its training. And that's something that mature AI teams have been monitoring and improving on over time. It's definitely a difficult challenge to try to take on your own, which is one of the benefits of Charlotte. Was one of the first generative AI assistants coming out in the security space and has been iterating and improving ever since. And so, especially with EDR, especially with the lack of people who have to now be experts in everything. Having a grounded and well reasoned generative AI assistant that can also, if not take action on your behalf, kind of set the table for you to take that action is a huge force multiplier.
Now, team, for the customer's perspective, what are the skills that they need to interact with the AI component?
With a modernized EDR solution, I mean, we touched on it earlier, right? Like the doing more with less is kind of the name of the game. But having a background or a number of certifications may be beneficial. However, many of your organizations are tapped on those resources today, right? The ability to afford that resource with those deep skill sets is becoming harder and harder to obtain. So, I mean, when you partner with CrowdStrike, for example, that helps expedite, the need in terms of a security analyst or an engineer, and that time to value with any skill level of analyst or engineer can be accomplished. I mean, where we're at now with generative AI or even the prompt, many folks have used Chat GPT, so it's just like having a conversation. Using Charlotte AI, you're able to interact very similar, right? So maybe learning more about prompt engineering would be helpful, but
Yeah, and it's certainly going to help. We see that a lot, even with consumer-facing, generative AI approaches, that you get what you put into it. But it's definitely the case with Charlotte AI that we've tried to minimize the amount of prompt engineering that someone has to do to get good answers out of it. The absolute goal of Charlotte AI is to make every analyst operate like a seasoned veteran. And of course, that's a big task, but at the same time, we want to make sure that if you're a novice and you're just jumping in, then like, hey, maybe you don't have to be an expert in the CrowdStrike query language in order to get going and operate at the same level as someone who is really well versed in the query language, right? If you can have the AI operate at that level to say, okay, they're not making the security decisions, but they're translating the natural language request into something that the system needs in order to do the job. If we can accelerate the analyst workflow even a little bit by doing that, then we've done our job.
Yeah, I mean, I may be a consultant who sees every nail as a hammer, but really is the mindset of what I would encourage people who are, in their career trying to develop and be, successful with these AI kinds of components is really to think strategically and consultatively. It's going to be a different kind of work, but there's plenty of work to do in security. But critical thinking, understanding how systems fit together, really, not just accepting the response from Charlotte or any AI at face value, but taking the time to read the audit, figure out the research, understand what the AI is doing on your behalf. Those are the skills that are going to help you to be successful with this kind of tooling, and we expect to see a lot more of it. And most organizations are not adopting, the full automation approach of AI, at least not today. That'll be next year's webinar, but for today, it's that co-pilot mode. And a co-pilot is just as skilled and trained and capable as the pilot, but you have both. And the point being is you need to be prepared to work with these AI tools, understand what they're doing on your behalf, and then use them to get the most leverage, because we all have more work than we can get done in the day.
Oh, very well said, Randy. Friends, one more question for you. What are some of the specific results you can share with us that your customers are reporting to you?
a single pane of glass, right? One agent to rule them all, as it's been said, right? Many customers are looking for that, right? The single source of truth. I just want the tool to work. I don't want to have to, be involved in the day-to-day as much as I need to be or should be. So that single pane of glass, that single source of truth, a secure and high available environment that is resilient to cyber events, if I had to like box it in one. But partnering with CrowdStrike helps get you to that specific result, that single pane of glass. So
Well
Yeah,
said.
from our perspective, speed is the name of the game as well. So anything that we can do to reduce the time it takes to investigate or respond to some sort of threat, that's super important to us, in also with just efficacy in general. But knowing just how fast attackers are moving these days, anything that we can do to make sure that there's absolutely the minimal amount of time before a security professional can do something about it, that's key to us.
Yeah, just to add our perspective as well, all of the above, but also being able to tie that back to your CISO and your board and the return on investment, right? If you're going to spend money on this product, and you're going to have people doing these roles, they're not just there to triage alerts, but really tying that back to the broader threat environment, to the ways investments are changing our capability to respond quicker, and really making sure that your stakeholders are educated along the journey of what this advanced tooling does and why it's important.
Randy, Chris, George, grateful for your time and insight today. Thank you for taking my questions as well.
Totally. Our pleasure.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
the time.
I thank our attendees as well. We're grateful you took time out of your day to attend this session. I trust you're walking away with some excellent new insights on endpoint security modernization. As always, I look forward to seeing you at one of our next events. And until then, for Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thanks so much for giving us your time and your attention today.